Hey everyone, 99% of you watching aren't subscribed. Let's change that. Hit that subscribe button, and at 1,000 subscribers, we'll drop special stories just for you.
The assembly of civilized worlds had never needed walls. For thousands of cycles, it stood as a testament to harmony, an open chamber suspended in orbit around a calm, blue-white star in the neutral system of Alera Prime. There were no defenses, no weapons, no guards. None had ever been necessary. Until now, the chamber itself was vast beyond simple geometry, a layered sphere of platforms and shifting environments designed to accommodate the physiological needs of thousands of species. Gravity varied from section to section. Atmospheres blended and separated through invisible fields. Light bent differently depending on who needed to see it. Once it had been filled with color, bioluminescent delegates shimmering in complex patterns, gaseous beings drifting in radiant clouds, crystalline intelligences refracting starlight into endless rainbows. Now it was dim, not because the systems had failed, but because the occupants had. Fear, across species, had a universal effect. It made everything smaller. At the center of the chamber, the hollow display flickered to life once more. Another system had gone dark. A murmur rippled outward, not loud, not chaotic, but heavy. The kind of sound that carried weight rather than volume. "Confirm the loss," said the high speaker. Their voice did not travel through air. It propagated directly through the neural translators embedded in every delegate. A calm, measured tone designed to prevent panic. The communications node pulsed in response. "Confirmed," it replied. "System designation, Virex 9. Last transmission received 0.4 standard cycles ago." The hollow display expanded, revealing the final moments. A mining world, sparse atmosphere, harsh terrain, the kind of place only a resilient species would colonize. The recording showed orbital stations operating normally, cargo ships moving in steady, predictable routes, surface lights marking habitation zones. Then, distortion, not an explosion, not an impact. Space itself seemed to hesitate. The stars behind the station warped, bending inward like reflections on disturbed water. "Energy signature?" asked the delegate from the outer ring. "None detectable," replied the node. "That is not possible." "Correction," said the node. "It is not detectable by known methods." The distortion intensified, and then the station was gone. Not destroyed. Gone. No debris, no radiation, no residual heat. The recording continued, wide-angle planetary view now. The same distortion spreading, silent and precise, consuming orbit, then atmosphere, then surface. Cities vanished mid-signal. Oceans stilled and disappeared. Mountains, ancient, immovable, simply ceased to exist. Within moments, the entire world was reduced to empty coordinates. The recording ended. The chamber did not react immediately. It took time for minds, no matter how advanced, to process something so fundamentally wrong. "That violates conservation principles," said a crystalline delegate from IRICA. Their facets dimmed erratically, struggling to refract coherent thought. "Mass energy equivalence cannot simply." "It is not violating anything," interrupted another quietly. "It is bypassing us." Silence settled again. Then, as if on cue, the hollow display shifted. Another system, another loss, then another. A pattern began to emerge, spiraling inward from the outer sectors toward the core of assembly space. "They are hurting us," said a strategist from the aquatic world of the Los. Their voice carried a low-frequency tremor that translated as unease, driving us inward. "For what purpose?" someone asked. No one answered, because no one could. At last, the high speaker dimmed the display. "Bring up the transmissions." A new sequence appeared, fragmented signals from the law systems. Most were incomplete, cut off mid-sentence, mid-thought, mid-life. But one repeated, clear, intentional, untranslated. The chamber systems rendered it into every known language simultaneously. "Compliance is mercy." The phrase echoed not audibly, but cognitively, across thousands of minds. "What does it mean?" asked a delegate. "It is a demand," said another. "No," said the high speaker. It is a statement. That distinction unsettled them more. A demand implied negotiation. A statement implied inevitability. They are offering surrender, suggested one representative. Then why destroy entire systems? Another countered. No answer came, because the truth was already forming, unspoken, in every mind present. This was not a war. This was a process. A delegate from Keth rose, its elongated form trembling slightly. We have attempted contact, it said. Every frequency, every encoding method. Mathematical, symbolic, biological. There is no response. No acknowledgement? Asked the high speaker. None. Then how do we know the message is directed at us? The Keth delegate hesitated. Because it appears only after they arrive. A quiet, terrible understanding settled over the chamber. The message was not a warning. It was a conclusion. Hours passed. More systems fell. Closer now. Closer to the core. Evacuation protocols were proposed, debated, dismissed. We cannot outrun them, said the Navigation Council. Their transit method does not align with known spatial constraints. We could disperse, suggested another. And be hunted individually? Came the reply. A different voice spoke, soft, uncertain. We could comply. The chamber froze. All attention shifted toward the speaker, a small, fragile-looking being from a low-gravity world. What would that entail? Asked the high speaker carefully. We do not know, the delegate admitted, but extinction is certain. And surrender, said another, to an entity that does not communicate, does not negotiate, and does not even acknowledge our existence is preferable. The small delegate did not answer, because there was no answer that did not taste like despair. At last, the high speaker activated a restricted protocol. The chamber darkened completely. Even the stars beyond dimmed as shielding fields engaged. This session, the high speaker announced, is now classified beyond all previous levels. A symbol appeared in the center of the hollow display. Ancient, rarely used, feared, a spiral intersected by a jagged line. Several delegates recoiled instinctively. No, one whispered. Not that. We have no alternatives, said the high speaker. They are unstable. They are dangerous. They are not unified. They are alive, the high speaker replied. That ended the objections. Slowly, reluctantly, the Assembly's databases unlocked sealed records. A world appeared on the display. Blue, green, chaotic, unpredictable weather systems. Violent tectonic activity. A biosphere filled with predators, toxins, and relentless competition. Classification, Death World, the system announced. A single designation followed. Earth. They barely survived their own evolution, said one delegate. They nearly destroyed themselves multiple times, added another. They still engage in internal conflict, a third warned. Yes, said the high speaker. The image zoomed in, showing cities, satellites, ships leaving orbit. They also refused to go extinct. That, more than anything else, held the chamber's attention. A species born into chaos that endured. Why have they never joined the assembly? Someone asked. They were evaluated, the high speaker replied. They did not meet the criteria for stability. And now, the high speaker paused. Now stability is no longer sufficient. The chamber understood. The message was prepared with extreme care. Every word debated. Every implication considered. In the end, it was stripped down to its core. No diplomacy. No pretense. Just truth. We are under attack. We cannot win. We request aid. There was hesitation before sending it. A final moment where the assembly, ancient, wise, advanced, acknowledged what they were about to do. They were asking for help from something they had once deemed too dangerous to trust. The transmission was sent. It raced outward, faster than any standard communication, pushed by emergency protocols rarely used. Then the system went quiet again. No response, no acknowledgement, just a slow, creeping advance of extinction. The high speaker dimmed their presence slightly. We wait, they said, and for the first time in its history, the Assembly of Civilized Worlds did nothing. They did not act. They did not solve. They did not understand. They simply waited helpless, while something unknowable came closer with every passing moment. And far away, across the dark between stars, something had already heard them. The waiting did not feel like time. It felt like pressure. Across the assembly chamber, systems continued to fail in the distance, each loss arriving as a quiet update, a dimming light on a galactic map. No alarm sounded anymore. No one reacted outwardly. There was nothing left to say. They had asked for help, and now they lived, or ended, between the asking and the answer. The response came without warning. No preamble. No identification. The central communications node pulsed sharply, so suddenly that several delegates recoiled instinctively. Incoming transmission, it announced. Every sensory channel in the chamber focused inward. Source, asked the high speaker. A pause. Then, origin, Sol system. The name alone caused a ripple. Earth. The message unfolded across the holo display. No symbols of greeting. No formal encoding signatures used by interstellar civilizations. No layered meanings or diplomatic structures. Just a block of translated text. Where are they? Silence followed. The kind that stretched not in time, but in comprehension. That is insufficient, said a delegate at last. They require context, tactical data, enemy analysis. We provided that, interrupted the communications node, attached to the initial transmission. Then this is their reply. Another asked, yes. The high speaker studied the message. They did not ask who we are. They said slowly. No, they did not ask what the threat is. No, they asked only where. A subtle unease spread. That is not strategy, said one representative. No, the high speaker agreed. It is intent. Follow up, asked the node. The assembly hesitated. What did one say to a species like this? Transmit full positional data. The high speaker decided. All confirmed encounter zones. Predictive trajectories. The node pulse acknowledgement. Transmitting. The data, vast, complex, layered, was compressed and sent outward at maximum priority. Seconds passed. Then, incoming transmission. So soon that several delegates flared an alarm. Display it. The message appeared. Received. Nothing more. They do not understand the scale, said a strategist urgently. We must clarify. Wait, said the high speaker. Why? Because something has changed. Sensors across the assembly network began to light up, not slowly, not gradually. Instantly, dozens of alerts cascaded across the holo display. Unidentified spatial distortions detected, the node reported. Origin, multiple. Vector, converging. The chamber stirred, fear rising again. They're here, someone whispered. The invaders. Negative, said the node. Signatures do not match previous incursions. Then what are we seeing? The answer came as the first rupture tore open space itself. It was violent. Unlike the smooth, silent distortions of the unknown enemy, this was aggressive. Space split apart with jagged edges, like fabric torn by force rather than gently parted. Light bent harshly around the opening, scattering in chaotic patterns. And from it, a ship emerged. Then another, then dozens, then hundreds. The assembly stared. They are early, said one delegate faintly. That is not possible, another insisted. They could not have mobilized. They did not mobilize, said the high speaker quietly. The realization settled heavily. They were already prepared. The human fleet spread outward, filling the void around the assembly's defensive perimeter. It was not what anyone expected. There was no uniformity, no symmetry, no elegance. Ships varied wildly in size and shape. Some were sleek and angular, others bulky and reinforced. Many bore visible damage, scars across their hulls, sections replaced with mismatched materials, external plating bolted on in crude but effective ways. One vessel drifted slightly off axis, its propulsion asymmetrical, yet still functional. Another carried what appeared to be exposed weapon systems, as if speed of access had been prioritized over protection. They are unfinished, said a delegate. No, replied another. They are modified. The difference was subtle, but important. These ships have been changed repeatedly, the analyst continued. Adapted, repaired, altered for new conditions. For war, said the high speaker. More ships arrived, not in waves, in bursts, each arrival tearing open space in a different location, with no apparent coordination, and yet somehow no collisions, no interference. Chaos, organized chaos. They are not forming a defensive grid. Observe the Strategy Council. Then what are they doing? The answer came slowly. They are spreading out to intercept. A new transmission arrived. This time, it included a visual feed. The assembly hesitated only a moment before accepting it. The hollow display shifted. A figure appeared. Humanoid, bipedal, symmetrical. Its features were simple compared to many assembly species. No bioluminescence, no fractal geometry, no shifting forms. And yet, there was something in its stillness, something focused, something dangerous. The human's eyes scanned briefly, as if taking an entire chamber at once. Then it spoke. "You're the assembly." It wasn't a question. "Yes," said the high speaker. A pause. The human nodded slightly. "Good. Saves time." Several delegates reacted, some with offense, others with confusion. "You have received our distress signal," the high speaker continued. Yeah, the human interrupted. "We got it." The interruption sent a ripple of discomfort through the chamber. That was not how interstellar communication worked. "You understand the threat?" asked the strategist. "No," said the human. Silence. "You don't?" asked another. The human leaned slightly closer to the display. "You said you can't win," they said. "That's enough." The simplicity of it unsettled them more than ignorance would have. "You are engaging an unknown entity," the high speaker said carefully. "Its capabilities." "We'll figure it out," the human replied. "You cannot improvise against something like this," a delegate burst out. "Entire civilizations have been erased." "Yeah," the human said, not dismissive, not arrogant, just acknowledging. "We saw your data. And you still intend to—" "Yes." The certainty in that single word silenced the chamber. Alarms flared across the sensor network. "Distortion signatures detected," the node announced. Every mind in the chamber snapped back to the tactical display. "They're here," someone whispered. This time, there was no doubt. The invaders had arrived. Space began to ripple again, but differently than before. Smoother, cleaner, terrifyingly precise. Multiple points of distortion formed simultaneously, expanding like controlled absences in reality itself. The human on the display glanced aside briefly, clearly receiving the same data. Then they looked back. Yes," said the high speaker. A pause. Then the human exhaled slowly. "All right, that was all." Across the void, the human fleet shifted, not into formation, not into lines, into motion. Ships accelerated in different directions, vectors crisscrossing unpredictably. Some surged forward immediately, others lagged behind, adjusting position. To the assembly, it looked like disorder. To a predator, it looked like encirclement. "They are moving to engage," said the node. "They're too close," a delegate cried. "They should hold defensive positions, analyze." "They're not defending," said the high speaker. "No," whispered another. "They're hunting." The final transmission from the human came through. No visuals this time, just audio. "You asked for help," the voice said. A brief pause. Then, "Stay out of our way." The channel closed. And for the first time since the crisis began, the assembly realized something new. They were no longer alone in the face of extinction. But whether that was a comfort or a new kind of danger, no one yet knew. The first impact was wrong. Not tactically, not visually, existentially. The assembly had centuries, millennia of recorded warfare. Conflicts have been studied, refined, optimized until violence itself had become almost procedural. Engagement distances were calculated. Weapon types matched the shields. Retreat thresholds defined. Losses minimized through perfect prediction. War, for them, was something that could be understood. This was not that. Contact in 3, 2, 1. The sensor grid flared white. The invaders struck first. There was no visible projectile, no energy discharge, no measurable buildup. A region of space simply ceased. One of the forward human ships vanished mid-vector. No debris, no signal loss delay, no residual trace. Gone. The assembly recoiled as one. Confirmed kill, the node reported, its tone unchanged. That's it? A delegate whispered. No explosion? No. There is nothing to detect, the node replied. The vessel no longer exists. A cold realization spread. This was not destruction. This was removal. Human fleet response, asked the high speaker. For a fraction of a moment. Nothing. Then everything. They accelerated. Not away. Forward. Every human ship surged toward the distortion field with aggressive, almost reckless velocity. Vectors diverged wildly. No uniform advance. No synchronized alignment. They're breaking formation, cried a strategist. They never formed one, another replied. They're scattering. No, said the high speaker, eyes fixed on the data. They're complicating the battlefield. The invaders struck again. Another absence tore through space. A second human ship vanished. Then a third. The assembly flinched with each loss. They're being eliminated, said one delegate, at this rate. But something wasn't aligning. Track hit probability, ordered the high speaker. The node processed rapidly. Probability decreasing. That's not possible, said the analyst. The enemy's method is perfectly accurate. Correction, said the node. It was perfectly accurate. All eyes turned back to the display. The human ships weren't moving randomly. They were moving unpredictably. Constant micro-adjustments. Sudden vector shifts. Erratic accelerations followed by abrupt decelerations. Not efficient, not elegant, but effective. They're denying targeting solutions, the strategist said slowly. They're making themselves harder to define, added another. In chaos, the high speaker murmured, they are finding survival. Then the humans fired. The assembly almost missed it at first. Compared to the silent erasure of the invaders, human weapons were loud, primitive, visible. Kinetic slugs accelerated to extreme velocities. Plasma streams burned across vacuum. Radiation bursts scattered in wide arcs. Those weapons are inefficient, said a weapons specialist automatically. Energy loss alone. Track impact. The high speaker interrupted. The node complied. Multiple hits registered. Effect. A pause. Then, no observable damage. A wave of dread swept through the chamber. They cannot harm them, someone said. Another system flickered. Another human ship vanished. They must withdraw, urged the delegate. There is no tactical advantage. They're not withdrawing, said the strategist. They're adjusting. A cluster of human ships altered course simultaneously, though not identically. They converged toward a single distortion point, tightening their approach vectors. Are they coordinating? Asked the high speaker. No centralized command signal detected, said the node. Then how? They're reading each other, the analyst said. Local decision-making. Real-time adaptation. The cluster closed in. One ship took a direct hit, erased instantly. The others didn't slow. They're ignoring losses, someone cried. No, the high speaker said quietly. They're incorporating them. The remaining ships opened fire at closer range. Shorter bursts, higher frequency, adjusting output, the weapons analyst noted. They're changing parameters mid-engagement. For what purpose? To test, came the answer. Another pause. Then, wait. The analyst leaned forward. Rerun impact data. The node complied instantly. A flicker appeared on the display. So faint it was almost dismissed as noise. But it was there. Something changed, the analyst whispered. What? Asked the high speaker. The distortion field reacted. It was subtle, barely measurable. But for the first time since the invaders had appeared, they did not remain perfectly constant. They can be affected, said the strategist. Not damaged. Another cautioned, "Not yet." But influenced, the high speaker said. That was enough. The next phase of the battle began without command. It simply emerged. Human ships across the field began altering their attack patterns. Some increased rate of fire. Others changed weapon types. A few disengaged briefly, only to re-enter from unexpected angles. "They're experimenting," said the analyst. "In combat?" Another asked, horrified. "That is their combat." The invaders responded. Their distortions tightened. Smaller, faster, more frequent. Human ships vanished in rapid succession. Losses climbed. The assembly watched, helpless. "They're being overwhelmed," said one delegate. "Negative." The node replied. "Explain." Enemy response indicates adaptation. A pause. Then the implication landed. "They are reacting to the humans," the high speaker said. And then it happened. A human vessel, larger than most, heavily scarred, broke from its vector. Its propulsion flared unevenly, clearly damaged. "Trajectory unstable," reported the node. "It's out of control," said a delegate. "No," said the strategist. "It's choosing this." The ship accelerated directly toward a distortion node. "Collision course," the node announced. "That's suicide," someone shouted. No species would deliberately. The ship did not deviate. It did not slow. It did not transmit. At the last possible moment, its core ignited, not as a weapon, as a detonation. The explosion tore through the battlefield. Not clean, not precise, violent, chaotic, a cascade of energy, matter, radiation. Everything the assembly had long since optimized out of warfare. It slammed into the distortion field. For a fraction of a second, reality stuttered. The distortion flickered. Silence returned to the stars. But it was not the same silence as before. Before, it had been the silence of waiting, of helpless inevitability creeping closer with every passing moment. Now, it was the silence of aftermath. The battlefield still lingered. Where once there had been perfect voids, regions of absolute absence left by the invaders, there were now scars of a different kind. Debris fields drifted slowly, fragments of human ships tumbling through space. Residual radiation flickered and faded. Emergency beacons pulsed faintly in irregular intervals. Life, broken, damaged, but present. "They remain," whispered a delegate in the assembly chamber. It was not awe, not relief, something deeper. "They remain." "Status report," said the high speaker. The communications node pulse, gathering data from across the sensor network. Enemy presence, none detected. A pause. Human fleet, reduced to approximately 42% operational capacity. A ripple of shock moved through the chamber. "Losses exceeding 50%, the strategist repeated. "And yet they continue functioning?" "Yes." "How?" The node did not answer, because the answer was visible. On the hollow display, the human fleet moved, not as a single entity, but as a collection of individuals acting toward a shared outcome. Ships linked together physically, transfer materials directly through improvised docking points. Others cannibalized wreckage, cutting apart destroyed vessels to reinforce those still operational. "They are dismantling their own dead," said one delegate, disturbed. "They are using them," corrected another. A damaged cruiser, its outer hull torn open, rotated slowly as smaller craft attached themselves along its spine. Within minutes, sections of plating were removed and redistributed, patching holes in nearby ships. No ceremony, no hesitation, no reverence that interfered with survival. "They waste nothing," the high speaker observed. Rescue operations were equally direct. Life pods were retrieved, opened, assessed. Those capable of returning to duty were transferred immediately. Those who were not, the assembly watched as one small vessel paused beside a drifting pod. There was a brief transmission, untranslated, but clearly deliberate. Then the vessel moved on. "They left them," said a delegate, horrified. "No," said the high speaker quietly. "They acknowledged them." The distinction was difficult, but important. At last, the assembly initiated contact. "Open a channel," the high speaker ordered. "Target," asked the node. There was no central command ship, no flagship, no clear hierarchy. After a moment, the node selected a vessel that appeared intact enough. Channel open, the hollow display shifted. The same human appeared as before, but now the difference was unmistakable. There were new marks, subtle discolorations along the skin, a stiffness in movement, fatigue that could not be concealed. Behind them, the interior of the ship was dim, partially damaged. Exposed wiring lined the walls. Emergency lighting cast uneven shadows. Still, they stood. "You're still here," the human said. It was not surprise, just confirmation. "Yes," said the high speaker. A pause. "We owe you our continued existence." The human tilted their head slightly. "Yeah," they said. "Looks like it." Several delegates shifted uncomfortably at the bluntness, but no one objected. "We must understand," the high speaker continued, "the entity that attacked us. No species has ever resisted it. No civilization has survived direct engagement." The humans said nothing. They simply watched. "How did you do it?" the high speaker asked. A long pause followed. Not hesitation. Consideration. Then, "You're asking the wrong question," the human said. A faint ripple of confusion passed through the chamber. "Clarify," the high speaker requested. The human exhaled slowly. "The question isn't how we did it," they said. "It's why you couldn't." Silence. Not offended. Not defensive. Just listening. "You built everything to last," the human continued. "Perfect systems. Stable environments. Predictable outcomes. That is the foundation of civilization," said one delegate. "Yeah," the human replied. "It is." They leaned slightly forward. "But you optimize yourselves out of survival." The words landed heavily. "You removed uncertainty," the human said. "Removed risk. Removed conflict. Those are desirable outcomes," another delegate insisted. "Sure," the human said, "until something shows up that doesn't follow your rules." The hollow display shifted, replaying fragments of the battle. Human ships veering unpredictably, colliding, adapting mid-engagement. The human gestured toward it. "You kept trying to understand them," they said. "Model them. Predict them. That is how one defeats an enemy," the strategist replied. The humans shook their heads slightly. "That's how you defeat something that makes sense." A pause. "They don't." The chamber absorbed that, slowly. "They erase matter," said the analyst. "They bypass physical law." "No," the human interrupted. "They use it differently." The distinction was subtle, but again, important. "You were looking for rules they follow," the human said. "We look for the same thing we always do. And you didn't find it." "No," the human nodded. "We didn't either." That caught them off guard. "You did not understand them?" asked the high speaker. "Nope." "Then how did you—" "We stopped trying." The simplicity of it felt almost offensive, but no one dismissed it. "On Earth," the human continued, "we deal with things we don't understand all the time." They gestured vaguely. "Storms, predators, diseases, other humans." A faint, dry edge entered their voice. "Lots of those." A few delegates shifted uneasily. "When something tries to kill you," the human said, "you don't wait until you understand it perfectly." "What do you do?" the high speaker asked. The human's expression didn't change. "You engage it," they said. "How?" "With whatever works." The battle replay shifted again, this time focusing on the moment of detonation, the first collision, the flicker in the distortion field. "You saw that," the human said. "Yes." "That's when we knew." "Knew what?" "That they weren't invincible. They had shown no vulnerability before that moment." "Yeah," the human said. "But everything has a limit." The high speaker leaned forward slightly. "You were willing to sacrifice your own forces to find that limit." The human didn't respond immediately. When they did, their voice was quieter. "We didn't want to," they said. A pause. "But we were willing to." That difference echoed through the chamber. Willingness, not desire, not recklessness. Decision. "You accepted losses we would never consider," said one delegate. Yeah, the human said. Why? The human looked directly into the display. Because we had losses like that before. The weight behind those words was unmistakable. You're not the first thing that's nearly wiped us out, they added. They do not hesitate. The message, on Earth, there were no grand parades, no planetary celebrations. Ships returned quietly. Damaged hulls guided into docks. Wounded transferred to medical stations. The dead counted, remembered. Commander Reyes stood in the observation deck, looking out at what remained of the fleet. Dr. Hahn joined him. You look terrible, she said. Feel worse, he replied. She handed him a datapad. Coalition message came in. He raised an eyebrow. Let me guess. Thanks, don't call us again. She smirked faintly. Close. He read it. To humanity, your actions preserve the civilization. Your methods have challenged our understanding of conflict. We offer gratitude and caution. You are unlike any species we have encountered. Reyes exhaled softly. Yeah, he said. We get that a lot. Hahn crossed her arms. They're scared of us. Good, Reyes replied. She glanced at him. You mean that? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked back at the fleet, at the ships that didn't return. They should be, he said finally, a new reputation. Across the galaxy, the story spread, quietly at first, then faster. A dying world, an unstoppable enemy, a desperate call for help, and the ones who answered, not the most advanced, not the most elegant, not the most peaceful, but the ones who could. They came without hesitation. They fought without restraint. They adapted faster than the threat itself. They survived. A new classification began to circulate through coalition records. Not official, not yet, but widely understood. Humanity, Deathworlders. Epilogue, the next signal. Far beyond the edges of known space. Something listened. Fragments of the battle. Energy signatures. Patterns of resistance. Analyzing. Learning. The Carzo were not entirely gone. And now, they knew something new. There existed a species that did not behave like prey. On Earth, the stars looked the same as they always had. Distant, silent. Commander Reyes stood beneath them, hands in his pockets, watching, thinking. Dr. Hahn joined him. You think they'll come back? She asked. Reyes didn't look away. Yeah, he said. A pause. Then, with the faintest hint of a smile. Good.